Season 3 of Bridgerton is giving me the Regency version of the guy next door, the girl next door, because Penelope and Colin, they are bringing the heat, okay? So let's go ahead and get into this recap on season 3 of Bridgerton. So season 3 kicks off with Colin coming back into town. And let me tell you something. I was like, who is this man? Because this is not the same guy from season 1 and season 2. He has come back. He is chiseled. He is suntanned. He is well traveled. But what's so funny about Colin's transformation, not just physical transformation, but the way in which he shows up with the ladies. Like in season 1 and season 2, he was definitely chill, he was laid back. He is out here charming the ladies, he's putting the flirt and flirting. And I'm just like, not him turning into a fully realized heartthrob. Like, okay, so you done seen the world for a little bit and now you're back. And there's a level of confidence at first that I'm like, oh, he's like really confident. Look how he's looking at the different ladies who are around him and really just charming them. And then I was like, you know what? This kind of feels like he's overcompensating. And I say that because y'all remember in season 1 when he was in love with Marina, really wanted to be with her, and then ended up finding out that she was lying, all that jazz. And then in season 2, he ended up going to talk to her, you know, still having some feelings, still seeking closure. And I think his way of dealing with all of his feelings was, I'm just going to go out and just see the world. And while he's seeing the world, he is seeing the women. The man is sowing his wild oats and having the best time. And so this version of him who comes back, I'm like, wow at first. And then I'm like, there's still some things that he still hasn't processed, that he still isn't dealing with, because it doesn't feel like the actual person that is Colin that we have known him to be. And so it's really interesting that they kick off episode 1 with his introduction back into society. And so you see Penelope, who once again is in the background, and she's looking at him and she's like, oh, Colin. And like clearly didn't know that he was coming back. Later on, we end up finding out that even though he was communicating with her, she was not writing back because of how he decided to talk about her in season 2. And so it's really interesting just kind of seeing her watch him and being around his family. It feels like she's an outsider, especially because she's not really on good terms with Eloise. But at one point, I swear that like he turned around and he looked at her and then just turned back around. So I don't know if it was one of those, he looked in that direction but didn't really see her, or if he really did see her and it was a dismissal. What's really interesting about this season is that you see the new Viscountess, Kate. She has moved in, and you see her and Anthony trying to, you know, be intimate with each other with all the family members around. And she's like, your mama's here. And he's like, I'm not worried about her. She's not worried about us. But why I really think that's really dope that they highlighted that is that even though that this was pretty common in the Regency era for you to have like generations in a household, that is something that's actually starting to be a little bit more prevalent now, especially with the economy of today. You're noticing a lot of people are like moving back in with their families, with their parents, or you see some parents moving in, especially if their child like now has children and needs support. It's becoming a more common theme. And so why I really love the fact that they introduced this is because one, it like actually counters the stereotype of like mother-in-laws not being able to get along with their daughter-in-law. I know at first Anthony was just like, I know you really want her out, or she's delaying. And then Kate was like, actually, no, like in my culture, in my Indian culture, like mothers tend to stay in the household, even though their children are grown up and they're married and they're gone. Like it is something that is really common. And so later on when I think they're at the park and they're like promenading, and I think she's talking to Violet, and Violet is like, oh, I'm just so sorry. Like so much is going on. The girls are out, and I promise you I'll find, you know, a home, a major home. And then Kate reassures her, and it's just like, we love having you there. Please take your time. We don't want you to leave. You still have purpose in the family. And I just thought that was such a beautiful moment. Like I said, because it just counters that stereotype. And Yes. There are some people who do have monster in-laws and everything like that. Yes. But I think this was like a beautiful depiction of Bridgerton, of kind of showing the dynamic between someone who's coming into the family and being received well and who's welcome, and like creating their own relationship, like them talking about Francesca and Eloise. Like you see that they're confidants, that they're friends, and that there's respect there. And I thought that was just like absolutely amazing for them to include. And so, as amazing as the Downragers relationship is with Kate, good sis needs some help with her own daughters. I think she really took into account her relationship with Daphne and that experience with Daphne coming out, as well as Eloise. I think she is someone who is very intuitive, and she was like, oh, I know my daughters. I want them to have these grand romances and to be swept up and fall in love just like I had it with their father. And I think that desire really tends to overshadow what her daughters want, because Francesca wants silence. She wants to be by herself. And so even though Violet has really great intentions, it still sometimes, supersedes what her daughters want for herself. But even in that, you still feel the love that she has for her daughters in the regard, as compared to Lady Featherington. mm, I believe Lady Featherington loves her daughters, and I see how much she is swept up in like society's way of doing things. Because honestly, I feel like she wants to feel like at the end of the day, I'm a good mother. I did my duty. They are taken care of. If anything happens to me, they're not destitute. And so she is giving Chris Jenner. She is giving Chris Jenner. Like, she is a momager. She is out here making sure that y'all getting married and y'all having babies, and them babies better be boys, like by any means necessary. She's always like multiple steps ahead. And honestly, it's because of the hand that was dealt to her. Like, her husband gambled away their fortune and left them fighting for their lives. And so you really see the difference between the two mothers and how they're trying to show up for their daughters. I will say the way that she was talking to Penelope and letting her know, I'm just so happy, at least I have you who will always take care of me. That was an awkward moment, because obviously she has expectations around how she thinks Penelope's life is going to, you know, how it's going to turn out. And Penelope's like, nah, that is not going to be it for me, which ultimately gives Penelope the spark and the agency to own her own life. She's just like, I'm not wearing citrus anymore. I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and do it, any and everything I need to do in order to get married, because what I'm not going to do is be a spinster taking care of her mama and being up in this house. That's what I'm not going to do. And so it's interesting how this moment for Penelope is where she ultimately starts to shine, where she's just like, I'm going to have my moment. And she does. So she has this moment. She's coming down the stairs, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, ooh, it's her. And Penelope's like, all right, where's the men's? Where's the men's? And you see her trying to navigate it, and she's back on the wall. And Jessica comes over, and she's just like, why are you here? And she's like, well, essentially, once the wallflower, always the wallflower. And unfortunately, once you get on it, it's hard to get off. You see this conversation that they have, and Francesca, gorgeous girl, clearly noticeable. She's a Bridgerton girl, and she's trying to shy away. And Penelope's like, even though you're trying to shy away, you can't help but stand out. And so, as someone comes and asks Francesca for a dance, and Penelope's like, you see, it's kind of like, I knew this was going to happen. Like, you came here, I'm on the wall, and you still got picked before me. And Francesca tells her, well, be careful about staying on the wall, because once you're on, you may not get off. So I do need to circle back to Mother Featherington, who did not set up her daughters for success the same way Dowager Bridgerton didn't. These mamas are not talking to their daughters about sex. They're not providing sexual education at all. And I get it. Way back when, well, I can't say way back when, because I have some people even now, they don't speak to their children around sex or provide sexual education. Like, they're not talking to the girls. And so she wants an heir so badly so they don't yank up her house. And One of the daughters don't even know that, oh, like sexual intercourse in the way that her mom was expecting her to experience involved penetration. I laugh every so often when these scenes come up because the mothers are so shocked. Like, why don't know? Why don't you know? And it's like, well, how else were they supposed to know? I guess they expected their husbands to be able to tell them, but it's like hilarious to me. You can tell that these mothers feel like all I have to do is A, B, and C, and everything else will be taken care of. They'll learn on the way. They'll get it together. They will learn the way that I learn. I feel like it just robs them of an opportunity to walk into their marriages like clear minded and being able to, be ready for all the expectations of them as wives. So Penelope is out here fumbling her way through trying to find herself a husband. And still to this day, I don't understand why or how Colin was like, oh, I'll help you. I'll teach you how to be charming and to allow the inner version of you that you imagine that you can be to come out. Sir, this man is setting himself up like immensely. You're setting yourself up. If you think that you could teach someone how to make men fall in love with her and not be the man who falls in love with her, you tricked yourself.
You cannot trick me. You cannot trick me.
You tricked yourself, and he thought he knew better. He thought he knew better. He thought that he could be removed. And it's just like, why would you put yourself in that situation? If for any reason you feel like you can teach a platonic friend of yours how to flirt and how to be charming and not think that any feelings may stir up from that, you are wrong. If you're going to do all of that, I just want you to understand you are playing with fire. You're playing with fire and you're fooling yourself if you really think that feelings can't be developed by acting or faking things. My big feelings around that is towards Penelope for saying yes. You said yes for this man to teach you how to make someone fall in love with you and to be charming and to be confident, and you're in love with him. This is real life, and you are watching this video. I want you to understand, if you know that you have been friend zoned and you have big feelings for the person that has friend zoned you, do not set yourself up. Don't set yourself up and potentially be heartbroken. Accept the reality of the situation for what it is, unless they've shown you that they too are interested in you. I personally wouldn't recommend it. If I had someone who was in front of me as a client or anything like that, and they're like, I like him, or da da da, I would be like, sis, watch yourself, protect your heart and guard your heart. So sisterhood is a huge theme in episode 1 because you see how Eloise and Penelope, once really great friends, are like looking at each other googly eyed from afar, and you clearly see that there's love that's still between them, but obviously there's a lot of experiences that they had, especially in season 2, where it's just like, I can't trust you right now. And so you see Cressida and Eloise starting to build a friendship. And what's really interesting is Cressida has always been seen as like the villain, like she's the antagonist. She's the person who is trying to cause havoc in the lives of like the Bridgerton women, especially Daphne in season 1. They were shown to be rivals, and that has been like the current vibe between Cressida and the ladies, actually all the ladies of the ton, to be honest. And so it's really interesting circumstances. Elise is like, I'm gonna go ahead and make friends, or I'm adjust or assimilate, and here she goes talking to Cressida. And what's interesting is like you start seeing her more as a person. You start getting like a fuller context of who she is as a character. And I kind of, definitely softened towards her because you can tell like she follows the rules of the ton. She cuts with her words. She's very much into, I'm gonna get the guy by any means necessary. Forget your feelings. I don't care about any of that. Very much like, dog eat dog world. And so what's interesting is that even though Eloise and Penelope are not friends, you clearly see that Eloise cares for her still, because when Cressida rips her dress, Eloise looks horrified first and foremost. And then she's just like, after in the aftermath, when they're walking in the garden, she's like, what you did was cruel. In that moment, one, she's advocating for Penelope, but two, she's letting someone that she's clearly trying to build a friendship with, letting her know, hey, what you did was kind of foul. And I appreciate that so much because it just kind of highlights the importance of having friends in your life that will hold you accountable. And so, in that, Cressida responds to the accountability with, huh, you know what? I can kind of see your perspective. And when you really think about it, like the ton actually doesn't support girls being friends with each other. And she even talked about how she tried to be friends with Eloise earlier on. And she was just like, well, I could tell that you weren't really interested in that at first. And she's like, I know I gave you reason because when you come out and you're looking for a husband, you're looking at every single other woman as competition. And that's kind of still the same vibes now. There's a lot of women who do struggle to have relationships with other women because, we're pitted against each other. As people especially are looking for a partnership, it's always, oh, what she's doing, oh, that other girl, oh, it's doing things for the male gaze. And so this is not anything that's new, obviously. But them highlighting that and giving more context to who Cressida is, I think was flat out amazing. Because sometimes people will see the actions of people and they're hurt by it and they don't ever tell them how it made them feel to be impacted by their actions. And even though Penelope didn't, Eloise was able to give her that context and be like, you're out here just being mean and cruel. And it's actually pushing you further from the goal that you ultimately want, which is partnership and friendship. And so them closing out episode 1 with that, I just thought it was beautiful too, because you start to see, okay, she's just more than just that catty girl. She hasn't had friendships or friends who've been able to hold her accountable and let her know how she's showing up and how that's just not right. And so I just really love the fact that they included that as well. So in episode 2, I really love the conversation that the Mondrichs have with Benedict around essentially the way that marriage should be, especially in the ton. And what's really fascinating about the conversation is like Benedict gives them like the lowdown. He's like, let me tell you something. All these rules is to keep the marriage mark going. It's so that people don't, unnecessarily get in trouble. But like once people are married, it's kind of like you do whatever you want to do. You see throughout the episode, it's like, well, this is how things are done. Wives, they are separate from their husband when it comes to their bed chambers, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't have a club. And it's like a lot of shoulda, woulda, coulda. A lot of this is what you should do, this is what you would do. And it's just so confining and so restrictive. And I just love how, like, as they're trying to find their way newly into the ton, that they're deciding what works for them and what doesn't work for them. But I really want to just kind of highlight that there's a lot of expectations that people have in relationships overall. Oh, this is what my partner should do. This is what my husband should do. This is what my wife should do. Just do whatever makes sense for your relationship, because it really doesn't make sense for you to try to compare your relationship to someone else's or to the standard, because you're going to fail. You're going to fail because you're not them. So you see Colin and Penelope, they're over here starting to practice. She sneaks into the house, or he sneaks her into the house. And she's just like, you have just the most beautiful shade of blue eyes. And he is dumbstruck because once again, he tricked himself into thinking that he could really help her do this and not catch any feelings, but that's neither here nor there because they're already in it. And so they're working, and eventually Colin like tells his sister, like, I'm just trying to help out Pen. And Eloise, who has no discretion and no filter, runs her mouth. And eventually everybody in the ton finds out that Colin was helping her. And baby, she looks so embarrassed. Like I was, secondhand embarrassment. It was so cringe. But like I really felt for her because with all intent and purposes, she's just like, I want to find a husband. And part of that is not being caught up in any scandal. And so here she goes, caught up in this scandal, embarrassed. And then like she sequesters herself upstairs for a whole week. And it's just like, damn. And then Colin, good old Colin, comes in and he checks on her. And she's like, I want to know what it's like to be kissed, because at this point my opportunities are ruined. Essentially, I could die the next day. And once again, Colin falls for the okie doke. And guess what? He kisses her. And now this man is having dreams about her. He's having dreams about her. He's thinking about her, feeling awkward when people bring up her name. And why, Colin, is this happening? Because you had underlying feelings for her that you really didn't know about. And now that you've given yourself and her opportunities to somewhat explore what it would be like to not just look at each other as friends, now you're feeling a little awkward. And then now here she go trying to practice using those skills, and she now has an interest that that she's actually considering, and he's like really feeling her as well. And now here you go, Colin, you looking sick. Colin is looking sick. He's looking like he done ate a lemon, because obviously someone is now interested in her. And so as the season continues on, like, I feel like Colin is fighting with himself to be like, wait, are these really feelings, or like what am I experiencing right now? And I think a lot of people don't really give themselves permission to explore their feelings. They try to resist and try to fight versus like really looking at a situation for what it is. I feel like it's really an indication that there's something about those feelings that you're either not ready to confront, or you don't want to admit that you actually feel that way about that person. And so entering into episode 4, you are clearly seeing things kind of heat up, because you know that Penelope's about to be proposed to, and her mom is now congratulating her after chastising her for having hopes of being married to begin with. Don't forget that her mom literally was just like, it's not so bad being a spinster or living an unmarried life, but now like we have a potential suitor who, they're talking in metaphors around, well, if this gentleman caller were to come to the mother, what would be said? Would they permit it or not? So he's really serious about her. Colin is sick in the face. He's sick in the face. He is sick in the face. And then you know what? They go to this ball and they're having this dance, and it becomes an undeniable truth that even the Dowager Viscountess sees. It becomes an undeniable truth that at the end of the day, Colin, you like that girl. So eventually he decides not to say anything. And then at the end of the day, Lord Devlin decides to actually propose to Penelope. And then when he starts having a conversation, he's kind of seeing and feeling the tension between Penelope and Colin. And guess what? Lord Devlin is not a fool. So he asks her, like, hey, what's essentially going on between you guys? And of course, she's going to deny it and be like, he would never marry me. And he's like, but would you marry him if the opportunity presented itself? And so it's like an opportunity for Penelope to be confronted with her feelings and to actually say, no, I like him, or yes, I want to be with you. She says nothing. She's quiet. And he takes it as an answer. I'm bowing out. I am done. So, of course, once again, Penelope is so embarrassed. She decides to leave. Colin chases her. Then they have this moment in the carriage scene. And it's just like, oh, y'all have decided to let all of the things go. And they start to get intimate. And I love that for them. I love that for them, because I think it's at that point we're like, about time. And I think so often people really feel like, oh, friends can't turn into more, and they absolutely can. So they clearly get into this carriage and they're having this conversation. Feelings are finally shared. Things get hot and heavy. And, they have a moment of intimacy, a little razzle dazzle. We love that for them. They get to the house and he's just like, girl, if you don't get up out of this carriage, like, you want to marry me or not? And I'm just over here like, oh, there is no charm in this part of the conversation with Penelope. And I think a part of that too is because like they're friends first. So there's not a lot of there's no need for frou-frou. Like, Colin can really be himself. And I feel like that was like the difference between how he was engaging with those other women. Very charming, but it felt like a mask. I feel like with Penelope, it's always just been them. And so you kind of, get that direct type of proposal. Is not flowery, but I really feel like that kind of highlights the intimacy of the moment. In part 2, I really feel like they're going to announce their engagement. I feel like Eloise is just going to have a moment where she's going to be like, I'm telling my brother, you can tell him, or I'm going to tell him. But one thing about it, he's going to know. Now, whether or not he knows before the marriage or not, or before the wedding or not, I have no idea. I do think that Penelope is going to have to think about opportunity costs. So the opportunity to become Colin's wife is going to come at the cost of possibly still being Lady Whistledown. I don't know. But I really do think that I mean, it's going to be a happily ever after. They're going to get it together, but the way in which they navigate that journey into the happily ever after, I feel like it's going to be contentious before it kind of settles down into it. I think there's an opportunity for like a new trio of friends between Cressida and Eloise and Penelope. I don't know if it will happen, but I think they could be like a little trio. But overall, I think those are like my thoughts. I don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know. But know that I am gonna go ahead and give a review for part 2. So if you really enjoyed this recap and this review and my thoughts about it, be sure to subscribe because I don't want you to miss part 2 of season 3 of Bridgerton.